Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ellie if you are new here. I previously made videos focused primarily on fiber arts and knitting, but I, a little while ago, uploaded a video which I will link here about my experience becoming a nurse, a second-degree nurse. I received such overwhelming support from that video. From other nurses and nursing students and people who were considering going into nursing. And it was so uplifting, and I'm just so incredibly touched by the response to that video. So just truly thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of you who shared your stories or your thoughts and experiences. It was just amazing to read all those comments. So thanks so much for all the engagement on that. But it really had me thinking about all of the other things I would like to share about nursing. So I made a pretty hefty list of videos I would like to make in the future. But the one I was feeling called, the topic I was feeling called to talk about today, is prioritizing peace as a nurse and what that means to me. Before I jump in to talking about any of this, I do want to share for my friends who do knit. This is my completed Versal sweater by Albina. I'll put the pattern details here. And then I'm working on my Esther cardigan by Petite Knit. So I'll be knitting on this while I chat to you all about nursing today. So anyway, this might be a little bit of a longer video, so feel free to grab coffee, tea, a little snack, and let's get into it. All right, I want to start by talking about what it means to lay a groundwork of peace as a nurse. As I mentioned in my first nursing video, my nursing journey began in trauma. I worked at a level 1 trauma center as a unit secretary. I remember when I first accepted that position, my wonderful nurse clinician had very thoughtfully sent me a handwritten letter thanking me for accepting the position, but then also I want to say it was her that described sitting at the desk as being in a fishbowl, in the sense that it's not like being a nurse or a CNA where you're kind of pitter-pattering around the unit all day. You're sitting essentially for 12 hours a day in the same spot, and people are coming up and talking to you all day long. And there was a part of that I really loved, and then there was a huge part of it that I really struggled with because I'm a pretty introverted person, and the environment that I worked in definitely gave me a lot of energy. Like it was a really energy-giving place, but it also quickly became a very honestly draining experience for me. But it wasn't until I switched units and came into my new job as a CNA on an oncology floor that I realized that a lot of the overwhelm that I was feeling was self-inflicted. If someone had said that to me when I worked that position, I would get very defensive, and I would list out all of the ways that it was the unit environment that made me feel overstimulated. It was the alarm fatigue that made me overstimulated. It was at times the patient population. It was the nurses coming up and talking to me. But let me explain a little bit about what I mean by being self-inflicted. So part of, at least for me, part of connecting with people pre-working in healthcare, pre-having healthcare experience, it meant meeting people where they were emotionally all the time. Kind of like when you're having a close conversation with a friend and they're getting really, they're talking really passionately about something, and so you're talking really passionately, and you're both like, super up here with each other, which is so fun, like when it's energy giving, it's really fun. But I found the closer I got with my coworkers, particularly as a unit secretary, the more I became a place for people to walk by my desk, and they were sharing very, very intense things that were going on with their patients, or ways they were super frustrated with a provider, or frustrated with a patient, or an assignment, whatever the thing was. And I was absorbing 100% of that energy, 12 hours a day, 60 hours a week for 2 years. And I was under the impression as that was happening that this is what made me a good coworker, because I really deeply cared about how my coworkers were feeling. I wanted them to feel validated in their emotions. I just wanted to meet everyone where they were. And in retrospect, you have to have boundaries. And this does not mean that you don't share in the stress with your coworkers. And this doesn't mean that you pretend like you're not impacted by intensity that goes on in your unit. But I guess what it means is that I spend a little bit of time when something happens on my unit as a CNA. Let's say I'm in a patient's room and things get a little bit stressful, or maybe a patient makes a little one-off comment to me that is not my favorite or whatever. I have two options when I leave that room. I can either engage in a unit culture of external processing, where I could go to the nurse's station and just say, oh my God, you won't believe what this patient just said to me. And, I'm not talking about patients being extremely verbally abusive or something that needs to be reported, or, whatever, different situation. I just more mean the little day-to-day things that you can either choose to make a huge emotional show of, or you can choose to just let it go and move on. And I think that I used to feel like part of validating my experience, my stressful experiences, working on trauma, part of validating it meant that I had to talk about it. And maybe for some people that works for them, but at least for me, the more that I had zero discernment of what was actually stressful and what was something that was just something I had to accept, when I stopped having any discernment there, that's when the burnout really, really started to happen for me. So just being aware of how you talk when you're at work and what you choose to talk about. And just also, having a bit of awareness of how you talk to your other coworkers and being respectful of their experience as well, that they might be having a stressful day at work, or they might be, having a stressful home life, and they're coming into work and they're trying to be focused, and you're coming up and telling them some kind of intense stuff that, maybe they don't have room to absorb. So sometimes on my new unit, if I want to share something with another coworker, I'll even ask them like, hey, are you in a good space to chat, or would you like, some alone time to focus, or whatever the thing is. So really extending that opportunity to feel peaceful to your coworkers as well is really, really important. And then just, not choosing to not engage in talk that is not helpful for anybody. That could be unit gossip, which I've been lucky enough to not really have a lot of experience with. A lot of the units I've worked at don't really deal with that as a problem. But what I do notice as a problem, which is my second point here, is not engaging in negative talk about patients. Again, this is a completely separate thing than talking about a patient who is abusive, or when you're talking about your assignment load or whatever the thing is. There's a time and place to talk about patients who can be challenging to interact with. I'm more talking about, again, using that discernment and choosing to provide unconditional quality nursing to all of your patients. It is so common in nursing, and if you work on a unit or if you do your clinicals in a hospital or anything like that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You'll be getting report from the previous shift and they will say, Mr. Joe in room 126, he was so annoying, or he was so needy, or he hit his call bell 24/7, or whatever the thing is, and they're getting all worked up about how much they don't enjoy this patient. And how many times do we hear nurses say, and I'm just, I just told them I was done and I left the room, or I just stopped answering their call bells, or whatever the thing is, which is not something I would recommend. When people tell me things like that in report, I really have made the conscious decision for myself to, not that I don't listen to that part of report, but I automatically say, okay, that was their experience with this patient. Today is a new day, or it's a new shift, and I have the opportunity to turn that around. So the number one thing I would recommend for experiencing peace with your patients is providing the utmost amount of dignity that you can provide for a patient. I like using the word dignity in this space because dignity is not about allowing poor behavior. It's not about, it's not really any sort of trick in any capacity. It's really just about showing the patient, hey, we're on the same team. I'm listening to you wholeheartedly and I respect you. And this relationship is going to be positive. And the way that I like to convey that to my patients is if I walk in and a patient immediately starts getting frustrated with me. For example, I had a patient one time who was about to be transferred to palliative care. He did not want to go into palliative care, but he was running out of options. Hospice was on the horizon for him. And he had no family and no friends, no social support. And he was understandably extremely frustrated and really was a very difficult person to communicate with. So when I went into his room, I decided, okay, I'm going to get eye level with him. I walked into his room, I crouched by his bed, and I just asked him, I let him speak to me first. I let him rant at me. I let him talk about his frustration with his illness and with his social situation. And once we got to a good stopping place, I didn't pretend like I had all the answers to help him. But all I said is, how can we make today the best day that it can be? What does that look like for you? And he was very quick to, brush me off and just say, there's nothing we can do or whatever. If that's the case, I I will just, again, reiterate to them that I am there for them if they change their mind. Sometimes I will offer, or I'll just go ahead and bring into the room like something as simple as a warm washcloth, just for them to, put on their forehead or behind their neck, or if they want it cool, doing that as well. Something that they, like a little peace offering that you can give them that says, hey, I really care about you and I want to help you regulate that nervous system. And that patient, for him, the thing that really transformed our experience together was when I introduced myself, I shook his hand. And just by shaking his hand, that completely transformed our relationship, like immediately. He went from being pretty verbally aggressive to me to recognizing this person can't fix all my problems, but she's at least on my side. That is the priority emotion and message that you should convey with both your actions and your body language and your tone. You will never be able to provide all solutions for all patients. It's just not possible. As much as we would all love to be able to provide that for our patients, it's just an unrealistic goal. And it's also unfair to a patient to claim to be that person. Even with a whole team of doctors and social workers and care coordinators and nurses, there are just certain things in people's lives that we cannot fix. And I think that as long as you're taking care of a patient who's in a complex situation, as long as you really prioritize for them a feeling of being cared for, I think that goes a very, very, very long way. So those are some ways that you can cultivate peace in nursing on the unit and with your patients. But another really massive section of your life to consider when you're thinking about building peace as a nurse is your life outside of nursing. And I'm planning on making an entirely separate video for this because there's so much I could say about this. But knowing who you are and building a peaceful life outside of nursing is going to be the biggest gift you could give yourself as a nurse. Because if you know that when you leave the unit that you have a safe space to come to, or if you know on your days off you have things that you're going to do that can recharge you, people that can recharge you, activities that can recharge you, really, really, really focusing on that is going to be so key. You don't want to bring in your external life into work in a negative way, in the sense that it's not fair to your coworkers and it's not fair to your patients to take out frustrations in your life, particularly when they are things that are within your control, and lashing out to people because of this other situation that's happening in your life. That's not to say that we are robots who are always consistent with their emotions, but I can say when my life outside of work is pretty calm and when I'm really prioritizing the things that make me feel good, it is really easy for me to stay level-headed at work. I've experienced both sides of the spectrum. It's like when things are chaotic, it's harder to be calm at work. And then when things are calm, it's easier to bring that calm energy back into my workplace. So I don't want to give the stereotypical examples of, exercise, eating well, whatever. Those are given self-care items that are super important. What I want to encourage is don't feel ashamed or like you're missing out in life by choosing non-traditional ways of managing stress. And what I mean by that is I am 25 years old and I have not drank since late 2020. So it's been almost like 4 years for me. And this was just a decision that I made just circumstantially in my life, that I didn't want to participate in drinking because I stopped during COVID and then just kind of didn't pick it back up. But I had a lot of shame when I moved to the city I live in now to work at the hospital I work at. I definitely got teased a lot for like not drinking, and not in a way that was, like bullying or something, but people definitely made comments a lot about the fact that I don't drink, I don't really go out, I knit. I knit and I spend a lot of time at my apartment because I love my home and I love interior design, and I spend a lot of time in my space. I spend a lot of time cooking. I spend a lot of time gardening. And this way of living is maybe a little bit unconventional, at least where I live. For people in their mid-20s. It's not to say that protecting your peace means not interacting with people. I certainly don't mean it that way. But if you're an introvert and you need your time, don't feel like you're wasting your life away by protecting your peace in this way. Like, if for you need to recharge when you get home by spending a day just reading at home, or, if you have a craft, like doing your craft all day, or going hiking or whatever the thing is, it's really okay for that to be your coping mechanism. And if you don't want to join your night shift coworkers and going out for mimosas at 7:30 in the morning after a night shift, if you're on that bandwagon and you feel like, I like to be able to bond with my coworkers, I have to go out with them, after this night shift or whatever. As Mary Oliver would say, listen to the soft animal of your body. If you are a sensitive person and you know that you take an insane amount of joy by spending your days off completely by yourself and just walking through antique malls, like, do that, or, if you are working night shift, I understand the feeling of FOMO by like not going out with your coworkers, totally empathize with that. And if that's a ritual that you love to do, then that's also good too. But if your body is saying, wow, I really need to go to sleep, go to bed, don't push yourself for the sake of participating in social activities just for the sake of feeling like you want to not have any FOMO. It's all about pacing yourself, and it's all about being honest with what makes you feel good. And also just really making sure that those habits, those coping habits that you have, that they are sustainable in the long run, because as we know, there's a pretty large rate of alcohol abuse in fields like healthcare, because it's a lot to take in. It's a lot of stress, and it's really easy to come home from work and to get into a habit of having a couple of drinks when you get home from work. But really working on saying, how can I protect my stress and protect my peace and protect my body and my longevity as a nurse? What can I do to extend the longevity of my career and not cut it short because I'm just burning myself to the ground? So whatever that looks like for you. And if it feels silly or embarrassing, even more reason to do it, Like I said, I get teased all the time about the way that I live my life, but I feel immensely fulfilled, both in my personal life and my life outside of the hospital. And that's all I could really ask for, you know? So anyway, I hope that those thoughts were helpful for you all. I have, like I said, I have a whole list of things that I'm interested in making videos about pertaining to nursing. But if you all have any sort of requests, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I would love to see what I can do. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time. Bye.